Chapter 11 of The Mandalorian has dropped on Disney+, and with it comes much more surprises. Let's talk about that right now. Hello everybody and welcome back to Joker's Movie Network. I'm your host Joker, and today we're going to be going over Chapter 11 of The Mandalorian, but yes, on top of that we will be covering Chapter 10 as I did not do it last week. I do apologize for not uploading a review of Chapter 10 as I did for Chapter 9, but I'm going to be putting it all in this video together since just last week was very busy for me. I do apologize. Real quick, before we get into the review, I do want to take the time to tell you about a new YouTube channel that I have just started called Star Wars from a Complete Point of View. This is a channel solely for Star Wars content, and I will be covering everything between Legends and canon, from the movies, the TV series, books, comics, everything in between. And since Star Wars is a big passion of mine, I figured it would be interesting enough to have a separate channel solely for Star Wars content. So if you like what you see and you like my content, but you're really interested in some Star Wars stuff, go check that out. I'm going to be uploading more videos to that soon. And I will be putting a link to my channel in the description down below, so please go check that out and please subscribe. So I'm only going to quickly go over Chapter 10 of The Mandalorian, mainly because I really didn't care for it. It was an okay episode, but it didn't blow my mind in any way. If anything, it just freaked me out. So the episode opens, and again, we're still on Tatooine with our favorite mechanic, Peli-Motto, as the Mandalorian has returned after defeating the Krayt Dragon with Cobb Vanth. Upon an interesting reaction from a character named Dr. Mandible, we learn that he knows about someone who can get Mando to learn about more Mandalorians. We end up back in the hangar with the Razor Crest to find Peli-Motto explaining to him that she knows the person that is going to be helping him find other Mandalorians. The catch is that she is needing transport to another planet, the same planet where the Mandalorians will be. Unfortunately, due to some travel complications, he can only travel through sublight speeds and not use light speed. Why is this? Well, the passenger that he's taking that knows all the information on the Mandalorians is this frog lady, which to my knowledge is just called the Frog Lady. But she's carrying her children that are undeveloped and need to be fertilized for them to be born. She's the last of her line, and if they travel at light speed, it would end up killing them. So upon traveling, they come across the New Republic, and we've got two X-Wings that start asking a lot of questions to make sure he's not smuggling anything, and they end up getting into a dogfight. And this is where I ended up being wrong. And I say that because when I went through my trailer reaction and I was coming up with theories on what was going to be happening based off of the scenes we saw in the trailers, we all thought that the planet he was going to crash land on that was a big ice planet was going to be Ilum. Turns out that was not the case whatsoever. Turns out to just be some remote planet that happens to be under New Republic jurisdiction to an extent, but it looks like it's a very uninhabited planet. After this dogfight that's really much more of a chase and not necessarily a fight, Mando ends up getting able to get away from the X-Wings, but in the process ends up crash landing on this remote ice planet. And that's when everything just gets kind of strange. He ends up sitting there, they're freezing, he's trying to fix the ship so they can get back on track to get out of there so they don't all freeze to death, and they realize that our frog passenger is missing. We come to discover that through a weird cavern of ice caves there just happens to be a hot spring where she is trying to warm up her eggs so they don't die. Because for the majority of this episode, there's been a weird plot thing going around about Baby Yoda who has been eating the eggs as they've been going through sublight speed. And the mother does not know about this, and the Mandalorian's trying to keep him from doing this. This is why we're all now getting to the point to realize Baby Yoda is chaotic evil. But now he's trying to get the eggs back into the jar that she's been holding them in, and they gotta get him out of the hot spring because he cannot protect her when she's out in the open like that. They're in an environment that he is not familiar with, and he'd prefer to keep her with the Razor Crest. Now, of course, because of this, Baby Yoda also is trying to eat more of the eggs out of the hot spring, and of course, he's saying no and pulling the eggs away, so Baby Yoda goes and wanders off to try to find food somewhere, and comes across what we think are stones, but turn out to be eggs, and something that looks like it's straight out of the Alien movie. The egg busts open when Baby Yoda starts crackling at it, and pulls out my worst nightmare for this episode. Pulls out an undeveloped baby Krykna. Now, of course, we know what the Krykna were. We hated them in Star Wars Rebels, and we're gonna hate them now that they're in a more animated live-action format. They're giant space spiders. And let me tell you, I was freaking out in my chair. My legs were up. I was just like, nope, don't touch the ground, don't touch anything. My skin was crawling. It was terrifying because all of the eggs start to hatch open and just rush out, and a giant one comes out. It's like Space Aragog from Harry Potter. It's everything that ice spiders wanted to be, but the Sci-Fi Movie Channel didn't have the budget for it at the time. It then turns into this freaky chase scene pretty much right out of Harry Potter, just put into Star Wars with them running through these ice caves, riddled with Krykna just coming towards them, and this gigantic one coming over the ice and shoving its legs through down into the caverns. They eventually make it back to the Razor Crest and lock themselves in after fighting them off to realize they're going to try to take off. The ship is destroyed. They're going to be able to limp their way through space, but he's got to get out of there. So the Mando starts to lift the ship up, and suddenly the giant Krykna just jumps on top of the ship and crashes it back down. Just when we think all hope is lost, the two X-Wing pilots show back up, one of which still being Dave Filoni from earlier in the first season. They come in, they take out all the rest of the Krykna, everything's safe, and they let him go on a warning, only because he protected a New Republic soldier, the same one I believe from the first season in that same episode that had Dave Filoni in it as well. But they're able to get off the ice planet and they limp their way across, and that's where that episode ends. Overall, it was an okay episode. It wasn't my favorite. If anything, it just kind of freaked me out. It really didn't do anything to further the plot. It really did feel like, I hate the word filler now, but that's just kind of what it felt like. But tonight's episode, episode 3 of season 2, otherwise known as chapter 11, was another one that was amazing. It was very much like chapter 9 as far as Cobb Vanth is concerned. It was just truly a great episode. This episode picks up right where we left off. We have the ship limping through space, headed towards this water planet that we saw in the very first sequence of the trailer for The Mandalorian season 2. And it's a planet that I still think is Mon Cala. I don't think they actually said it. Again, it's 4:30 in the morning right now. I just watched the episode and now I'm recording this, so I may have missed that. Part of me wants to think that it's Mon Cala, but I have some reasons to think it could not be. But he ends up trying to land in Mon Cala. He's coming in hot. The ship's not working. He's about to land, and then an engine fails and he ends up falling in the water. And then what I think is really cool is that the people on this planet, being the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, again, both signs pointing to it being Mon Cala, have a repurposed AT-AT in the water that's acting like a crane. And they're able to take the Razor Crest out of the ocean, back onto the landing dock, and then he pays to have someone try to fix it up. Upon that, he finds the husband to the frog lady who he has been transferring, and he ends up talking to him and saying that you're supposed to be able to tell me where I can find Mandalorians. So they go into an inn, and he starts asking some questions, and there's a Quarren that says that he can take him to the Mandalorians. So they end up on a boat, which is what we see again in the trailer, and there's a big open crate in the middle of the ship where he's trying to show them this creature. And upon doing so, the Quarren knocks Baby Yoda into the water, and this sea creature devours Baby Yoda inside his little harness. The Mandalorian jumps in after it, only to discover that they're only doing this to get the Beskar armor. So he's now trapped underwater with this beast that's trying to devour Baby Yoda. But then all of a sudden, Death Watch shows up. So 3 Mandalorians come down out of the sky, take out everybody, rip the cage open. They're able to get Mando out of the water, and then they get Baby Yoda out of the beast's mouth. His cradle is destroyed, but the baby is okay, thankfully. And he's saying, thank you. I was supposed to be finding others of my kind. I've been told that I've been tasked, I have to take this child and bring it back to his people. And then they all remove their helmets, and naturally he freaks out. He's like, where'd you get the armor? You're not Mandalorians. And they're like, oh, he's one of these. And this is where we're going to get some pretty big insight on the whole Mandalorian concept between what exactly is a Mandalorian. Because apparently throughout Legends and canon and just all the different types of games, books, shows, comics, there's a lot of discrepancies as to what is a true Mandalorian and why everything is so different depending on where we're seeing it. But when they remove their helmets, we see Katie Sackhoff playing the one and only Bo-Katan, and it was a pleasure to see her, and a very rare occurrence to see a voice actor portraying the live adaptation of that character on screen. That doesn't happen very often, and this is the only time that I can really remember knowing of something like this, so that's really cool. But upon the explanation, we discover that there's a little bit of a difference in the Mandalorian people in that Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, is a child of the Watch. Bo-Katan then goes to explain to the Mandalorian that the Watch are a cult of religious zealots that broke away from Mandalorian society, and their goal is to restore the ancient way. And I'm assuming by the ancient way being not removing their helmets, which is probably something we saw during the Old Republic times during the reign of Mandalore the Great or something like that. But even then, he doesn't seem very okay with the answer, and he's saying the only one way is the way of the Mandalore, and then he shoots off on his jetpack. Later on, he ends up getting jumped by a bunch of Quarren that's saying he killed his brother, being the one that was on the boat, And then, of course, Bo-Katan and the rest of the Mandalorians show up again and kill everybody off, and then they start talking and trying to get along. Something interesting is that through this point, we get to see Sasha Banks' character, and she really is just one of the side Mandalorian characters. She doesn't really have many speaking lines. Most of her appearance is action-based, which I think is interesting considering a lot of people were assuming that she was going to be playing Sabine Wren, which obviously, that's not the case. But we end up moving along, and it turns out that there is an Imperial Gozanti cruiser that is parked in this area that is full of a bunch of weapons that the Mandalorians are trying to steal. And they want to get the Mandalorian in on this to help them retrieve these weapons. I thought this was really cool. This is the first time we see a live-action version of a Gozanti class cruiser, and I just kind of geek out over stuff like that. I really love the ships, so seeing this was really cool, especially at the scale that it was at. So he ends up agreeing, and he goes onto the ship with the rest of the Mandalorians, and they're basically, apparently, all the stormtroopers on board and all the Imperial officers are thinking that they're pirates. So they end up crashing in and just wreaking havoc. Like, they're shooting stormtroopers down left and right. It was completely badass. We get to see true Mandalorians at their best work. They end up throwing out smoke grenades. They're using the infrared in their helmets to take them out. They're just moving their ways up. They open a hatch that opens a blast door, and everyone flies out into space, down into the ocean. It's crazy. And the whole time this is happening, we're getting scene changes to the bridge where there's a bunch of, Imperial officers in there trying to hold the ship together, and they end up getting in contact with Moff Gideon. This is the first time we've seen him in Season 2. And they explain to him that there's a group of Mandalorians taking the ship, and they're so far into the ship that he says, at this point, you know what has to be done. They can't get the ship, for the glory of the Empire. So the guy who's in charge just ends up shooting both the pilots, taking them out of their chairs, and he's planning to run the ship into the water. Of course, he doesn't get that chance, as of course the Mandalorians break in and then they take him. And then Bo-Katan starts questioning him because she's looking for a specific weapon, and I think we all know which weapon it is. While Sasha Banks' character and the Mandalorian are trying to pull the ship, veer it up so it doesn't crash land into the ocean, Bo-Katan is trying to get information about where to find Moff Gideon to get the Darksaber back. But before she can get any information out of the officer, he pulls what can only be described as a Star Wars version of a cyanide capsule, bites down on his teeth, and he gets electrocuted. So I guess he had a tooth cap that had probably plasma or something, but it just shocks him and ends up killing him. And during that process, they're able to regain control of the ship, and they're veering off, and everything's fine. And then the Mandalorian is ready to leave, and he's like, look, I gotta go. I have to take this child to its people. This is the end of the line. And Bo-Katan's like, well, the job is still open, and it's going to be open for a while if you want to come back and help us with our cause. And he's like, it's a possibility I might do this, but I need to find the Jedi that you told me about. It is at this point that a huge bombshell is dropped at the end of this episode when Bo-Katan again removes her helmet and tells him, take the foundling to the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus. There he will find Ahsoka Tano. Just like that, just drops the name out there. Doesn't say, you'll find her there, you'll find him there, you'll find them there. Just like, to keep it mysterious is to keep us guessing. No, they're like, you know what? No more guessing. Just straight up, boom. You'll find Ahsoka Tano there. Big, mind-blowing moment. It gets me excited. I don't think we're going to be seeing her in the next episode per se, probably an episode or two later after that. There's still going to be some build-up to that moment. But it leads me to keep questioning, like, who's going to be playing Ahsoka Tano? Obviously, we have a lot of the rumors that it's Rosario Dawson, but none of that was actually confirmed, and I'm not going to say anything until it's truly confirmed, and that may just be when we watch the episode. But the point is that Ahsoka Tano truly is going to be in The Mandalorian, or at least at this point we think she will be. For all we know, he could go to that planet and she could be gone. We really don't know. But overall, this was a fantastic episode. Seeing a bunch of Mandalorians fight stormtroopers again in a live-action format was truly amazing. The action was great, and this episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, which to me made a lot of sense because it was just amazing. But what did you guys think of both chapters 10 and 11? I'm going to assume you probably liked one more than the other. You may have liked both, or you may have just felt meh about both of them. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. I want to talk about it. But until next week rolls around and we get chapter 13, that is going to be it for this video, guys. Remember, if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see more movie news, or if you'd like to see anything else. And once again, as a quick reminder, before you leave, please be sure to go to the link in the description and go sub to my new YouTube channel, Star Wars from a Complete Point of View. But until then, and as always, I will see you guys next time.